Erin, I am so excited.
Yeah, what are you so excited about?
Atheistpodcast.com.
Oh, yeah.
We got a website.
I know, it's pretty awesome.
It's really awesome, right? So people can go there, and what are they going to find when they get there?
You can find more information about each episode. You can find all the episodes. You can find out more information about us. It's just a great way to learn more if you're so inclined.
Yeah. And you can even, I think there's a place for you to like email us there if you want to offer some suggestions for shows, or if you have questions for us. We'd love to get your questions. We'd love to have it be a place where people can kind of interact with us more.
Yeah. So check it out, atheistpodcast.com. Welcome to the Atheist Podcast. I'm Erin.
And I'm Kelley. Atheist is where we will explore American cultural trends through the lenses of a devout theist
and a devout atheist. We will discuss the messiness of being human,
the latest in social science, psychology, and American culture,
and what any of it has to do with Homo sapiens' longtime preoccupation with religion. Hey, Kelley.
Hey, Erin.
How's it going?
It's you know what? It's going so well.
It's going well.
I'm really excited because here we are today, and we have Katie Wedding here with us. And Katie is a grief counselor and a medium, and we are continuing our conversation about women and witches and healers and people who show up in hard and difficult spaces for people as they care for them. And so, Katie, we're really excited to have you here.
Yeah, welcome.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk to both of you.
Awesome. Well, why don't we just start and tell us a little bit about yourself? Like, who is Katie Wedding? Yeah.
Well, so I was listening to your very first podcast on my way here, and there's so many similarities and so many things that I wanted to start with to share. So I was raised here in St. Louis. I'm the oldest of 3 kids. I was raised in a really traditional family. My father's a physician. My mom stayed at home with us. She had been a nurse. And I was just typical oldest child. Followed all the rules, did everything. Went to Catholic school, kindergarten through the end of college. So I don't even know how many years that is. But yes,
a lot of years.
Catholic school. And I wouldn't say that my parents were like especially devout, but I would say that we went to mass every day at school.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And also on Sundays. So, 6 days a week. In what was a great community that was very close. Yeah. But there was definitely an outline to my life that was, planned long before I lived it. So, and I would say that I followed all the rules for a really long time. Got married. Married my college sweetheart, and had 3 children. And I think I was doing what I was supposed to be doing until my mom got sick 10 years ago. And we were so close. And I had 3 little ones under, 3 under 5 at the time.
Oh my gosh.
And looking back, so she passed within a year and she was 59. And the closer I get to that, the more I realize how young she was.
Yeah. Very young. Yeah.
And I just remember I was able to be really present with her. And as we got to the end, someone told me, just make sure you ask her to send you some signs when she passes. That was not her world at all. Like, this was not anything I was aware of or anything that was in my consciousness. So I asked her to, and I said, but I need you to tell me what you're going to send. And she said, what if they don't let you pick your signs up there? And you're going to be looking for it. And she's like, you'll know it when you see it. So she passed. And exactly a week later, probably to the minute that she passed, I was standing outside talking to a neighbor, and a hummingbird flew by, and I just had this feeling of familiarity, and I knew that it was her. And so at the end of the day, I said, if that was you, send it to me again in another way so that I know it was you. And I walked around the corner and I picked up our little like local newspaper that I always throw away, and I just opened it, and the entire front page story was about hummingbirds. And that just continued to happen. I have chills as I'm retelling it, even though I tell this story all the time. Just constant, like 3 and 4 times a day for that first month, I would say, hummingbirds were being placed in my path. So I knew she was there, but I also knew that this was not something that I had ever explored or believed in. I just felt like she was still around. So that's my story as to like how I came to know that in my reality, there was life after death and that your loved ones remain around you. But as I said, I was staying at home with 3 kids. Backing up a little bit, I went to school. I was a special education teacher, taught prior to kids, and then went on and got my master's in school counseling. And while I was doing that training, I worked in a grief. Here in St. Louis, we have Annie's Hope, very similar in Indianapolis. And I worked with little kids who were grieving, and then ran grief groups. I was drawn to it, but I didn't have the personal experience, and there was nothing that really, I was drawn to it. I didn't understand why.
Yeah.
So after my mom passed, I realized I have the ability to explain death to kids, and I felt comfortable with that part of my own kids.
Yeah.
Like, I know this is so hard. I know you're losing your grandma. I'm comfortable explaining death to them. And I began, after she passed, doing the same with friends, like giving them books or counseling journals that I had used or therapeutic toys. And then thought, that must be my calling. Like, that must really be the purpose in all of this. So I opened a shop, and my kids called my mom. Her name was Vicky. I opened a shop, Wicky's Wings is what they called her. And it was a hummingbird. And I was working in making care packages for grieving families. And I did that for about 4 years and thought that must be really what I meant to do. And then on accident, there was a medium that was coming to St. Louis. And I thought, I want to do that. My mom had been gone for 5 years. I want to go talk to someone and see if she can get a hold of my mom. But when I went there, I didn't realize that it was a class for mediums, not doing a mediumship reading. So I said, oh, I'm in the wrong place. I thought you were going to do a reading for me. There were probably 30 people in the room that knew what they were doing. And she said, no, you're where you need to be. So I took her class, and
I love that.
We practiced on each other through the next 2 hours. And I don't know, everything I was saying was landing with all of my partners. Everything that was coming through for me was making sense to people. And I thought, well, I don't know how this happened, but that was a one-time thing.
Yeah.
And then I just ended up, my mentor who taught that class, Lindsay Marino, continued to teach classes. I continued to take them, and I realized I can do this, and I have no idea how I know this, except that I know that my mom is there. So if my mom is there, other people's loved ones must be there.
Yeah.
And so I've been doing that now for about 6 years.
Oh, wow.
And I love it. And then that, of course, led to mediumship readings. Everybody who comes in for a reading is grieving. Yeah. And so I just began to use my counseling skills, went on and trained under David Kessler, who is a renowned grief expert, and became I'm called a grief educator. I don't operate under my counseling license. So I'm a grief educator as well. So I see people in private sessions, and then some spiritual companioning. Specifically, that has come through with the population I work with. So, yeah, that's it. That's a long roundabout story.
Yeah. And how you have kids?
I do.
How old are your kids now?
So now I have a senior in high school, a junior in high school, and a freshman in high school.
Wow.
Yeah. So now, they're old now.
Yeah. But you're in it.
Yeah.
You're still in it.
Yeah.
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 Yep. I have 3 kids. They're 3. One just turned 10, and then the other one is 12. So we're in it, and
those are hard ages.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
all of the above are hard
Uh-huh,
ages.
mhm.
Yeah,
it's wonderful and always hard in all the ways.
It is, and it flies. And then everybody always complains about teenagers. I love it.
Yeah.
They're just like little adults, and it's so nice to be able to have conversations with them.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I'm now like pretty recently an empty nester. So I have a 25-year-old. We have two 22-year-olds and then a 20-year-old.
Oh wow!
They're not twins though. This is like we have a blended family. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So we call them the twins. Ethan and
Your
Emma.
220, the
220, but they're not
22-year-olds.
biological. Yeah.
Oh, I love
Yeah.
that. My 2 oldest are live out in California and are playing water polo in high school out there.
Oh.
So it was so unplanned, and I'm like,
Wow.
I feel like an empty nester because I just have my baby, my
Yeah.
freshman at home, and I'm not what I thought my
Yeah,
life would look like.
Wow.
But
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. So your path to mediumship, it wasn't like, well, it was kind of a discovery.
Yes.
For sure. Something that kind of emerged, but also something learned also.
Mm-hmm. For sure. I mean, it was a skill that I realized had probably always been there.
Mm-hmm.
I also recognize that I think many, if not most, but I would say many people have the ability to do.
Yeah.
It's not something that I remembered knowing anything about growing up. Like
Yeah.
I was not, that was not on my radar, but yes, I've learned and continue to learn and practice.
Yeah.
So when you like go to a course, I mean, like what skills are they teaching, or what do you feel like? I mean, if you could explain a little bit about what that process of learning is like.
Yeah. What's so interesting is the way that it started, because I kept waiting for her to teach us how to start.
Yeah.
And there was no like how to. Like she just kind
Take
of
3 deep breaths, cross your fingers, and
she just kind of put out there that you can do this. And so every single time she'd say, we're going to open up and I want you to read this person, I would just open up and read the person, not knowing how I was doing it. So skill-wise, she teaches a lot about your 6 senses, your clairs. And so using your clairs. Clairsentience is the ability to feel something without knowing how you're feeling it. Claircognizance, just knowing it. I'm very clairvoyant, so I see things. And there are ways that you can practice your
that's
clairvoyance.
what that word means.
Yeah, clairvoyance is clear seeing. There's clear audience, which is being able to hear like voices, conversations. So she has a lot of like little different skills that we would practice to learn. One being recognizing like the names of your past loved ones. To practice that, we would go through a baby book of names and just see which names you're the most drawn to, bringing names into your awareness and now I'm much better at understanding the name of the person that I'm reading. So, yeah.
Interesting.
It is interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that, and I love the fact that it's like just that sense of just opening yourself up. And I mean, it sounds like I have a really clear memory. I think I was a freshman in high school, and I can just see this moment so clearly where this friend of mine, and actually this girl that I'm thinking of actually died in a it was awful. She died. She was hit by a car that same year. But prior to that, I just remember seeing her at school and having this real sense like something is wrong. Now, that's a kind of typical skill that people have, like, right? You can notice something. But I just remember noticing that and being really drawn to the fact that she is upset and asking her, what's wrong? I know something's wrong. And then her like look on her face of like somebody recognized that in me. And I just remember that being like kind of like a core experience. Like there's something in being open.
Yes.
to other people and just being sensitive and being present to what people are feeling.
Yeah.
Is that kind
That's
of what
exactly. You're very much of an empath, probably, and open to the energy of other people. I had a very similar in high school. Like, I remember being at McDonald's after school, and there was a man sitting there with a bunch of kids, and I just remember feeling so sad for him. There was no reason to. He looked fine. He was there with a bunch of teenagers, and I remember saying to people, "Do you feel sad for that man?"
Yeah.
They looked at me like I was crazy, but I had those kinds of things happen all the time.
Yeah.
And it's very similar to when you're reading someone, having that clear, it's that clear sentience, a feeling.
Yeah. I love that. The clairs.
Yeah. So how do your clients come to you? How do they find you? How does that process work?
So it's very much word of mouth. This entire business for me has not been done correctly.
No.
Like, I don't market. It's very much word of mouth, and it's very much, I've noticed I do a lot of readings on Sunday nights, and throughout the rest of the night, Sunday night and all Monday, I get emails from random people asking to book. So it's interesting. It's all word of mouth. It's all, if I do a large group reading, then people will come back. I am still, my kids were raised within the Catholic school system.
Yeah.
I get a lot of families within my community that come to me and say, "Please don't tell anyone."
Oh, interesting.
That I'm coming.
Yeah.
So and also the area where I live, I get a lot of just like local people who come and say, I don't know anything about this. I also don't think I'm supposed to be going to a medium, but you're so normal, and I know that you're such a, a good person that I believe you're trustworthy.
Right.
So I would say word of mouth.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Yeah. I mean, I think it speaks to, like, these are people that are in need, right?
Yeah.
They're looking for connection and for someone to see them.
Yes.
I mean, on whatever level that is, right? But that's definitely, like, at the heart of it.
Yeah, and it's also something you don't realize you need until
you're
you
in
need it. Like, you may believe forever, I don't believe in mediums, or I don't believe in life after death, until you lose a loved one.
Yeah.
And then you're looking for anything that validates that they're still here.
Yeah. I asked that question to Amy earlier. I was like, do you find that there are people who, like, are kind of pretty staunch skeptics for a really long time, and then they lose somebody, and then they're hungry for it? Yeah.
Yes. I'm sure she said yes, because that's much of, we have people that come into readings that sit down and say, I am so skeptical of this, but I'm also really missing my loved one.
Yeah.
She was kind of saying that for her, if I recall this right, that like the skepticism does make it hard. Like, if you're in that, then it makes it hard for, like, that session to be successful sometimes.
The best readings are people who are open, whether they believe or not, are just kind of open, because it is an energy exchange. So we always tell sitters, like, if you can talk out loud when I'm reading you as much as possible, you don't have to give me a lot of information, but just say, yes, that makes sense, or no, that doesn't make sense. That actually moves the energy and kind of moves the room better. So when they are skeptical and they sit with arms crossed and kind of like, no, it's just, to their detriment. Like, we want to tell them, your reading would be so much better if you could communicate with us. So,
Yeah. And you guys also you read together.
We do. We've been doing a lot of that lately. It's really fun.
So we didn't talk about that with her, but can you talk about that a little bit? Like, what that's like to read with somebody else?
I love reading with another medium.
Yeah.
Because it always, like, I know what I'm seeing. So what we'll do is we'll have one client, and then both the other medium and I will open up and read the client, but we all read differently. Like, my strength for so long has been clairvoyance. I've read with other mediums that can feel something or hear something. And so to know that we're reading, like, the same spirit who comes through but shows themselves in different ways to us, the client always leaves feeling really validated, knowing that both of us saw the same person or felt the same person, but we got information differently. It's really powerful.
It's almost like getting kind of a
It
three-dimensional.
is. I mean, it's my favorite. And also for me to have the energy of another medium in the room just raises everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
So interesting. So when you say it's like an exchange of energy is kind of the phrase that you use, like, what does that look like? Or like, what does that mean? Or how, I don't know. Can you say more about that?
Sure. So, I wish I could credit who said this. I don't know. But the best way that I explain to a client about your loved one coming through is like if you look at the blades of a fan, and if the fan is off, you can count them and you know they're there and it's present. But when you turn it on using electricity and it starts to spin, you can no longer like differentiate all of the blades, but you know they're there and energy is moving. And that's what it feels like when we are communicating with your past loved ones. They're still there. Their soul or their spirit is still there. You can't see it anymore, but we raise our vibration to kind of tune into the same frequency. You know, it's like trying to find a radio and you're tuning. Okay, now I finally hear something. And so we're tuning into that same frequency. So there's that energy that's coming through from knowing that they're there, and they're kind of lowering their vibration a little bit to meet with ours and then delivering messages. It feels a lot to me. So for me, when I do a mediumship reading, and everybody works differently, I will look at the sitter and your loved ones, your mom's side of the family comes through on the left-hand side for me in a very organized, probably because this is the way I am, like a very organized family tree. And then your dad's side is the right side. Right behind you is like a love or a really deep soul connected relationship. All to the side of you is your own generation, and then down below you is children. So that helps me, and I continue to ask them, please keep sending them through that way, because I can look and know that this is grandma on the mom's side. This energy right here is mom, you know, and I can kind of go around that way. So I just open up by looking around to see where that energy is coming from. And then for me, they show themselves. Like I'm looking almost like if you think about the inside of your forehead, that's where your third eye would be. That's where I am seeing images. And it sounds so strange. I project them out so that I can watch them. So when I'm doing a reading, we're having a conversation, but I'm looking around you because I'm trying to see the images that they're showing to me.
That is wild.
That is wild. Is there ever a time when you're like, I can't see anything? Does that ever happen?
It never happens that I can't see anything. It has happened 3 times in my life that I have seen something very clearly and the person sitting there cannot take it.
Oh.
So, and I think a lot of times people schedule because they have someone they want to talk to.
Yeah.
And we really can't control who comes through.
Oh, I see.
So
they could be coming for one person and somebody else shows up.
Well, yes, the sitter might be coming for one person, and we say, just be open to whoever comes through. In our hour-long sessions, I almost always, like 99% of the time, will get to your person.
Yeah.
But be open to who someone else is first.
Yeah.
And it sometimes it's random. Like sometimes it's someone you knew who passed away while you were both in high school, but you didn't ask for them to come, and why would they be coming?
Yeah.
Right.
Just be open, and there's a reason for that. So, yes, I would
That's
say.
fascinating. That fan metaphor really that resonates. Like that makes sense to me. This idea of this.
It's still there.
Yeah. But I even think about like a visual representation of something that's like kind of passed through the veil, and it almost feels like if I something that would be almost like fuzzy or like moving. Like I'm thinking of like a movie where it doesn't it's not smooth.
Yes. So we say when we are in that state, we're high vibration, and it does. It vibrates. Like everything vibrates, and it's not super clear. You know, you think
Yeah.
of the movies and it's never like Ghost or anything
Right.
like that. It's I just
Somebody's not sitting behind
it's
you.
never that clear. I wish it was.
Yeah.
I describe it more as like being at a huge cocktail party and
Yeah.
I'm like eavesdropping on conversations.
Yeah.
And so sometimes for me, it's like, who do I want to talk to? Hold on, there's a lot of people here. Okay, I'm going to
Yeah.
listen to this one.
Yeah.
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 It's got to be. It sounds like it would be pretty draining. Is it? Are you pretty tired at the end of it?
The longer I've been doing it, no, I'm very energized, but also in the classes I was taking, I had to really learn how to set boundaries. So when you're training, you're just always open. Like you've never learned how to open and close down.
Yeah.
I have like pretty specific rituals. When I open, it takes me 2 seconds, but closing down, I'll go outside, I'll drink a lot of water, I'll breathe in, I put out to the universe, I'm closed right now. So that when I'm in Target, I'm not seeing your past loved ones.
Yeah.
In the beginning, though, I just think because you're so in awe of this world, you're always open and it is really draining. I have learned for myself, I cannot do more than 3 readings in a day.
Yeah.
I really can't read more than twice a week. And it's important for me, like in this phase of my life right now, to really moderate my calendar and just say, I'm taking a month off. And when my month is off, that means please don't ask me who's around you right now, or
Yeah.
please don't, because I am closed.
Yeah. Do you
So-
find friends doing that all
Oh,
the
yeah.
time? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And it's fun. And most of the time I don't mind, but I have had to be better about saying like,
Yeah.
I'm just closed right now.
Yeah. But also, I noticed that as a spiritual director, when the work that because typically you come to these kind of charisms, these gifts, like because you've been doing them already,
Yes.
right? And so when I did start doing it as work, that kind of helped to set a boundary.
It
around
does. It does.
So it's not like, I'm here for your, I mean, like, I'm all for sitting and having a spiritual conversation with whoever, whenever, but also, like, I want to talk about, something else too sometimes.
Yeah, and how
Yeah.
much of that is your own lesson in valuing your
Yes.
time, valuing your energy, and learning? And that's such a lesson I've had to learn over
Yeah.
these 6 years. Is just because I can doesn't mean I always should.
Yeah.
So
So I've been on your website and I've
Uh-huh.
looked at your calendar and stuff, and I've been on a couple times, and I'm like, this girl is booked. Like, you are booked up, right?
there is such a need.
Yeah.
I open my calendar monthly,
Mm-hmm.
and this has taken a lot of trial and error.
Mm-hmm.
I open it monthly. I send out an email to everybody who's on the mailing list.
Mm-hmm.
It books within 10 minutes.
Oh my gosh.
And then, but it's only for that month. And then
Yeah.
I say to myself, I'm going to wait and see what
But
I
I
feel
like
doing.
that. I like that.
It feels so good to me, finally. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think there is I think it just
Books.
speaks to the need
Yeah.
of what people are wanting right
Yeah.
now.
Have you had clients who are just like, I need you, and I haven't been able to get an appointment in 3 months. Like, how do I get to
Yes, I have. I love referring out. That's why I love knowing so
Yeah.
many other good mediums,
Yeah.
because if you really do believe you need, but I'm also a big believer in timing and that
you? Yeah.
spirit. And when I say spirit, I'm meaning higher power, higher consciousness, your loved ones will bring you at the right time.
Yeah.
So maybe you haven't been able to get in for 3 months, but you'll end up when you need to be here.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
So how does that work with? So you're also a grief counselor. So educator. Okay, sorry. Thank you.
That's okay.
But then is that also that people are booking sessions with you for that as well? And
Yeah.
I guess how is that
How does that
process
work?
different, and how? I mean, I guess tell us more about that.
So I have 3 different types of sessions. So mediumship readings are spirit sessions. And then grief are solace sessions. And those are completely different. I love the way that I do it as a grief educator. As a therapist, you would want to make sure that you have availability and that you're able to continue. My solace sessions are really just people emailing me and saying, I need a session. And that session can look so different depending on what the person needs. A lot of times they'll just bring their photos of their loved one in and things that belong to them, and they just want to talk for an hour about their loved one. Like they may have reached a point where, the death was a while ago and people have stopped talking about their loved ones, and they're like, "Will you just listen to me talk about my loved one for an hour?" So those are more scheduled on an individual. Like people will text me if they need those. It's a different calendar.
And those you feel like you can do more of.
I can.
Even
those
though,
are a different kind of energy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even though that's also.
It is. Yeah. That's also really challenging work.
Yeah.
It is. I loved your guests, Betty and Kyle Mertens. We're talking about just showing up for people. Like there's really no right or wrong way to do it. I'm just available.
Yeah.
So those feel like a different energy.
Yeah.
And then my soul sessions are my spiritual companionship. That's the third type that I have. I do open a calendar for that. And that is kind of a combination of, I really don't like the word psychic. It's not a psychic session, but it's more like talking to your soul and spirit guides about a specific issue that you're having an issue with, or often, because of the population I work with a lot of women who have been part of organized religion and have reached a point in their life where they say, there is really no place for me as a woman in the religion I was raised in. And I am seeing there's so much more out there, but I don't know where to start with that. So that's those sessions.
I totally relate to that, and in the work I do in spiritual direction, spiritual companioning. I work with so many women in that space where they're just like, I need something new. I need to kind of reconstruct something, and I don't necessarily want to give all this up, but I don't know what it looks like now, and it's powerful work. But I'm curious in terms of what you said, like. They come with that as maybe an intention, and then you're able to, and I would think probably through, as your gift as a medium, you were able to kind of also bring in this kind of spirit.
It's a little bit of a different energy. There's mediumship where I'm just communicating with your past loved one, and then there's an intuitive reading where I'm communicating more with your spirit guides. And yes, often clarity just comes through with, have you considered, taking up this hobby? This may be a good thing for you. Have you thought about traveling to this place? So.
Yeah. And did that come out of conversation?
It did. All of it evolved from mediumship.
Yeah.
Okay.
Everything. So I started with mediumship and then recognizing, like, I'm wanting to spend more time with these people than a 50-minute session.
Yeah.
Like, it brought up a lot of grief, and then we end up sitting talking about their loved one. So that's where the solace sessions came from.
Yeah.
And then also having people reach out and say, I know I've done a mediumship reading with you. I don't need another one. I don't need to talk to my past loved ones. But like, what's next for me? Like, I believe there's more.
Yeah.
But who do I talk to about that?
Yeah.
So,
That's
very cool.
That's very cool. So one of the questions I'm curious about is like, who might we might be surprised about who comes to you? Like, I know you said like, maybe somebody in your town or like, and I'm not telling you, obviously, I'm not saying no names, but I mean, like, are there people that we would be surprised?
Yes.
Like you said,
almost
people from
all.
your community.
And they would be surprised.
Yeah.
So people will come in and say, don't tell anyone. And I'm like, I just wish you knew who left prior to you.
Yeah, right.
It's your own community. It's so many people that you know. I would say surprised is, I don't know that you would be surprised, but it is a lot of people who are still like very actively involved in their faith, which may be teaching that coming to me is not okay.
Right.
Something that surprised me is how many men I see.
Interesting.
So I started with women, and I'm seeing a lot of grieving men who feel like there is no place for them to express their grief and no place for them to find a spiritual connection. So I've read a lot for a lot of men.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
And then finally, the final one I would say is I don't have a policy about it. I don't really read for teenagers, but teenagers are the most open.
Oh, wow.
Open
Yeah.
to spirituality and receive their own signs.
Yeah. That's interesting. Well, it's now that I think about it, though, it's not surprising to me that you would have like more men, and interested, because I think that is such a, like, I don't know, women are just allowed to sort of process their grief culturally, like more openly, and men, it's not as accepted.
Yes.
I was talking about that with my oldest son, who just kind of went through like his first little heartbreak, and we had some friends over, and it was like a Diamond Dogs mount up kind of situation, right?
Yes.
And if you're a Ted Lasso fan, and because he didn't necessarily want to talk about it, and I was like, I promise, like, if you talk about it, it will feel so much better.
Yeah.
And but I think that's part of the reason that boys love sports, is because it's like, this is a socially acceptable way to express emotion. Like, I can hug someone, I can cry, I can like high five, and it's like okay to be in that way, where there's so in so many other parts of our culture, we just don't allow for that for men.
Yeah. And when you've lost someone, you have no choice but to suddenly have some emotion.
Yeah.
But even in that, then, like, this happened actually, I don't know if it was, recently in this last year, my husband, 5 years ago, or 6 years ago, my husband lost his dad. And my husband was there. He was present for it. He had really beautiful moments with his dad prior to him passing. And, but he didn't grieve. He didn't really grieve in the way I thought, because my husband's a pretty sensitive guy, and I didn't see him grieve in that way. And I was like, well, maybe that's because, he really truly believes his dad is in heaven, and, maybe that's just not something he's grieving as much. Yeah. But then this last year, he had a friend whose mother died. And all of a sudden there was this, is it called postponed grief or displaced grief? But he grieved this man's mother, who he did not know, like he was grieving his father. And it was big. It was big grief. So that, like, it's gonna come out.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so how beautiful that it can come out, in a safe and helpful way through you. Yeah. And that you have that background too. So, because it seems to me that there could be examples of mediumship that would not be healthy or responsible.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so how were you taught, or how do you make sure that the space that you hold is really safe?
Oh, that's a good question. So I only work with a higher vibration. I have no interest in communicating with anything lower vibration. When I open up, I actually do bring the Holy Spirit in. I say a little prayer.
So you're talking about higher vibrations, like the holy, the good, the sacred, as opposed to lower,
correct.
like there's no, like,
I know mediums that love to communicate with like negative energy and love to do, the Ouija board and seances. And I don't do any of that. I know people do.
Yeah.
And that's just, I think I set that intention, and I have always made that very clear. And so I think that's one way that I think there's a medium for everyone, and I think that the people I attract are people who really only want to talk with their past loved ones.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's one way. And then I set the intention before I open up, just to protect all of us who are in the room and communicating. There's the stereotypical like mediums, fortune tellers, etc. I actually don't know very many of them. But
Yeah.
I know that we do get that reputation.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
But that sounds like you are really setting an intention and even having some kind of practice around protecting yourself,
Oh, yes.
protecting people.
Yeah.
and- yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
Yeah,
beautiful.
that's great.
Yeah.
But I'm sure that there are people like we did talk about like the skeptics and stuff. Have you ever like come up against people or just even in your own life, like
Mhm.
people who are just like, Katie, really?
Yeah, my own family.
Yeah. Right. So how do you deal with that? Like if
Yeah.
I ever went to my parents and I was like,
Uh-huh.
you guys,
Uh-huh.
so I'm opening up another part of my practice here. Because my mom wants, like, even when I say like I'm a spiritual director, my mom translates that as like, oh, you're a prayer partner. You're a you're a prayer partner.
Yeah.
Like that's like acceptable language. You're a prayer warrior for somebody. And I'm like, well, it's a little different than that, but that's like what translates for her. So if I went and I was like, you guys, I'm going to also be a medium, they would be like, start throwing holy water on me. And they wouldn't because they're not Catholic, but
Yeah.
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 So how have you dealt with, what does that look like?
So I feel like in the very beginning, it bothered me because I was so like impassioned about it.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
would try to explain it to my scientific physician father who was like,
Oh, yeah.
okay, there's no reasonable explanation for this. And I'm like, I know there isn't. I've stopped trying to explain it. And I also feel like it's not my role to convert anyone and evangelize anyone.
Yeah.
Right.
So I'm just being me.
Yeah.
At this point, it's been interesting to watch the conversations that it's at least opened up,
Yeah.
and to hear my dad, will share an article with me now. Like, thought you'd find this interesting, and I'm like, I do. Do
Yeah.
you find it interesting? And then to see he's much more open to signs from my mom now,
Yeah.
and he's receiving them. And then my husband's parents were really had a hard time with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's against our church's teachings. My father-in-law passed away. It'll be 2 years this summer. And he shows up, and my mother-in-law, is not recognizing them as signs or communication, but just he's present. Again, I think it's one of those, until you've had a personal experience with grief, it's hard to understand how someone can talk to dead people.
Yeah.
Except often people say, but I do feel like they're still around.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah. So even for your mother-in-law, when like feeling present, like, is that different?
we have not had that conversation, but she has so many cool stories of things that have happened, since he's passed, that I just say to her, well, he's still around. Well, I believe he's watching over us.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
It's
It's interesting. So are they, because your in-laws, they're religious, right? So I'm like, what?
As the atheist, you're like, you believe that somebody died for
Right. Well, I actually had her explain to me what are we Catholics supposed to believe? I don't know. I honestly don't know.
Right.
And she said, well, heaven is far away with God. And we don't have permission to bother those who have passed.
That's so funny. I mean, it's not funny. I mean,
know.
it's interesting, but I
It's
think that's a lot
interesting,
of people's vision, right? But it's like, where did they get that?
Yeah.
Like that.
So interesting.
Right. Well, and that's so much of the work is realizing, gosh, how do I explain this? So, all right, I had a woman, I don't think she'd mind me saying this. Amy and I had a woman that we read earlier this week who wanted to talk to her friend who had passed. And she said, I'm just curious. My friend's husband also passed. My friend was very religious and her husband was an atheist. Amy and I said, well, how crazy is that? We were both just invited to be on this podcast.
Oh, funny.
It was same day, same conversation.
Yeah.
So the friend brought through, she said, which one of them was right? Like and the friend brought
okay, this is the answer. Here we go.
Well, of course, it's and she brought it through very clearly. it's a both and.
Yeah.
Like it's all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All.
Yeah.
And I have had people come in
Yeah.
that have said, I'm worried about my father because when he passed, he was not particularly close to Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
And the father just was showing me these pillars of light, almost like skylights shining up into the sky and saying, there's so many different paths to the same place.
Perennial tradition. We were just talking about that.
Was there a word for that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
Because when he said that, I had goosebumps and was like, I see what he's saying. Like we all end up in the same place, and yet that place is not even a place.
Yeah.
There are so many different things that you do in the afterlife.
Yeah. It's interesting.
Well, even the Pope just said, I don't know when he said this, but I think it was pretty recently. He said something like, I do believe that there is a hell, but I hope that there's nobody there. Something like that.
I love that. I love that because someone asked me that, and I said, in all of the readings I've done, I have never spoken with someone who is in hell. Even very, very, very difficult people in life who in our mind we believe, God, they belong in hell.
Yeah.
That is not where they show up.
Wow.
Right?
That's so fascinating.
Yeah.
It's, I mean, the more that I try to, like, we were talking to Amy about, we kind of got into like complexity theory and like quantum theory. And like, that's kind of where I am with all of this, like in the way that we're all connected really to like the origin of the species and to everything that will come after. It's like that lineage.
The fact that we're like breathing the cells of Caesar. Like,
but even like this, if you're thinking about like the family members that are like still with you.
Yeah.
Well, they are because they are in your body on a cellular level.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, and that resonates
and that's
with
like
me.
real.
Yeah. And it's real.
Correct.
Like fact, biological.
Right. Yeah. We were saying too,
Correct.
like the idea that when spiritual practice or when spiritual things that we might not be able to totally 100% rationalize, but when those things are kind of echoed in nature, energy kind of
Patterns
and reprocessing and, quantum thing, this happening over here and affecting something over here. Like, it's like,
there's just so much out there.
And almost like there's
more things under.
I'm going to throw this out here and let me hear, you guys can react to it. But it's like, it almost feels like in a way, like some of the, not all religious traditions, because like some I think are more open than others, right? But like it seems like in some they almost close you off to like all of the possibility of what could be.
Absolutely. I would say that's like in my own small community of Catholicism, it's fear. Yeah. And the fear is, that we've been told you're not allowed to. It does. It very much closes you off to actually everything I'm doing is just validating everything you've been taught. Yeah. That there is more. And but then
they don't see it that way. It's so interesting.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I love to the person who came back and the atheist like, who's right.
Right. I thought that was funny.
It's both and because that is actually the thing, the both and, right? Yeah. And this is always what Erin and I talk about is the nuance that there is no black and white. There are things that we know now and things that we don't know yet. And that this both like, and even when our first interview, we interviewed Belden Lane, who's a theologian. He's a retired theologian from SLU, and he said, well, you have to be a little atheist about some things, right?
Yes.
Like he's like both. He was like, yes, I am both.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I just love that was such a clear and wise answer. Yeah.
It's just the awareness that we don't know anything.
Yeah.
None of us know anything. Yeah. And and also in the same way that people say, I don't understand how they can be with me and be in heaven and be with, they're no longer a person in a body. Yeah. Their soul and their spirit are all everywhere.
Energy.
I don't know, but it's not something we understand and can explain.
Yeah.
Every time I dream about my grandparents, I dream about them at O'Hare Airport.
Really?
I do. And it's always like they're never together. And like
Uh-huh.
my grandfather's always looking for my grandmother. And I'm like, dude, she is like
Oh.
off. She is like everywhere. Like, don't, like, I know you love her, but you know what? Just let her be. Like,
Have
and
you
they're-
had that interpreted? Have
No-
you had your dream
no.
I'll give you the name of my
Oh,
my
yeah.
high school English teacher.
Really?
Is now a dream interpreter.
Oh, that's
Love
amazing.
that.
I have gone to one before, but I didn't bring them that dream.
Oh,
But yeah.
she'd
Yeah.
because she always begins with setting.
Okay.
Mm.
Yeah. O'Hare Airport. Isn't that funny?
That is hilarious.
I know. I know.
Well, I was wondering. So you said that you haven't seen anybody in hell. Do you see people in heaven?
Yes, but it's interesting. It's me having a conversation with them and asking them, "Can you show me your heaven?" And then the client always gets tripped up by that.
Yeah.
Because what they'll show me, I always say you have to imagine how would they feel in this setting, and it's different for everybody.
Mhm.
So like I've had someone show me a really busy, crowded street in Rio with like beautiful lights, and the client was like, "Oh, that was where we went on vacation, and they loved it so much, and it would make sense they'd be in the middle of the party at night outside."
Yeah.
That makes sense. I've had someone else show me like a train depot from when they were a child, or So a lot of times it's a favorite time in their life.
Yeah.
But the client gets very tripped up by like, how is that their heaven?
Yeah, because they have like more fixed ideas of what.
Right.
Yeah,
And it's like,
yeah.
no, right now they want you to imagine how would they be feeling on a golf course in St. Andrews or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, this idea that like heaven is far away and that like people who are people who have passed are then far away from us and not connect. Have you ever read any John O'Donohue?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I love John O'Donohue so much, and he's a theologian and a poet who he's passed, and he died pretty young, he's a Celtic theologian, so Celtic poet, and one of the things he said. So I wrote this paper for Aquinas when I was doing spiritual direction stuff about a conversation that I was having with John O'Donohue that I was imagining, where we were having a conversation about Meister Eckhart, who is this medieval, not necessarily medieval, but mystic. And one of the things, so it was almost like, I felt like it was almost an exercise in mediumship, in like, because I was imagining this conversation, and I was literally, as I was writing it, I was like, what is he saying? But I was also, the things that he was saying to me, I was pulling from books.
Right.
So I was pulling from his.
But you were channeling him at the same time.
Yeah, so I was like reading his books and like listening to his voice and like marking it. And one of the things he said, quote unquote, to me was, he said, yeah, the dead. He said, yeah, of course, the dead are all around us. I mean, where else would they be?
Yes.
I mean, where else would they be?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, so this idea, this idea of, the heavens, and I'm sure that goes back to Greek and, old ideals of, the universe and beyond and things like that. But, also, yeah.
Yeah. I think the idea of a faraway heaven is probably very comforting.
Yeah.
But also, I like the idea that they're still around us and that heaven is really all around us.
Yeah.
I love the canon Henry Scott Holland. It's he wrote a Death is Nothing at All, and the end of it says, "I've just slipped away in the other room, like I'm just waiting for you for an interval." I believe that. I do believe that.
That time is relative, and like so that people who pass are not like waiting for years for their young loved ones.
And that's also a question we get all the time is, do they miss me? Are they sad that they're not here? And the answer I always get back is, it's such a wrinkle in time for them.
Yeah.
Like the amount of time that we are apart is nothing. And they're also right here.
Yeah.
So what feels like I may not see them again for another 30 years to them feels like, well, I'm right here.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just a short amount of time that we won't be back together.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, if it's the whole history of time,
Yes.
Yeah.
then
Yes.
30 years is
Yeah.
not much.
4,000 weeks
Yeah.
is, so, okay. I'm going to ask so I have a friend who passed, and I'm not asking you to do a mediumship right now in the air. That's not what I'm asking. But I am telling you, like the whole, like the flickering light thing.
Yeah.
I mean that, and now I just turn to my lamp when I'm like, hey, Andy.
Yeah.
I'm so glad you're here.
That's so real.
I mean,
So I will say that
is that real? Like,
it's
is that what it is?
Definitely real. So every
it didn't
client,
happen until after he died.
yes,
That's
yes,
crazy.
yes. So there's many different ways that they try to get our attention, or that they're trying to communicate with us. And lights, electricity, music coming on, the television coming on. That's one way. You turn on the radio and a song comes on that was your song, or that the lyrics mean something. Sending winged, like birds, insects, things like that. Numbers, patterns of numbers, or looking at a license plate and seeing, someone's name on it. That finding things.
Like if you lose something and.
Yeah, I have a really. Do you want me to share? I have a cool story about that.
Oh my
Are you
gosh.
thinking of something
well,
too?
you're just making me realize I was literally just, so these earrings I'm wearing right now, I call these my get lost earrings because I have lost them so many times. But the last time I lost them, I lost one on an international flight. I was coming back from Ireland and I lost it. And then next thing, like a couple weeks later, I found it in my house and I was like, what? I literally lost this on the plane.
Yes. There's no way that, how did it then end up in your house?
Right.
Yeah.
And now I'm realizing Andy probably
Yeah, and
found it for
they're
me.
just trying to communicate.
Yeah.
And almost everyone who comes in for a reading has a story like that.
Yeah.
That they share at the end of the reading. So I'll ask, how are you communicating with them? And the loved one will tell me, and they're, I knew it.
Yeah,
I knew
they found that for me.
Yes, and it's never all the same thing. It's
Yeah.
many different ways that they're trying, but they each have their own unique way to share.
You have a wild
Well,
story?
just with my own personal, my dad threw away everything of my mom's one day.
Oh.
Like, I used to go into her closet and just, like, it still smelled like
Yeah.
her and all of her clothes. And he had a really bad day. And he, like, gathered up all of her clothes and, like, threw them in a pile. And I don't know.
Yeah.
And I came home. I had gone over there and everything was empty. And he's like, I'm sorry. I had a really bad day. And I threw everything. He threw it away, like, put it in the trash. Didn't donate it or anything. Just really fell apart. And I said to my husband, all I wanted were, like, some of her pajamas, because I wanted to make pillows for the kids. And the last sweatshirt we bought together, it was like our last shopping trip, and we had bought a sweatshirt, and then this black handbag. That's all I wanted. And then I would hear her voice say, go back and look again. And her entire half of the closet was empty hangers, but there was a box up in the corner, and it had all of her pajamas, the sweatshirt, and the purse.
Shut up.
How? I still don't know.
Shut
Like, I don't
up.
have an explanation why you would even put all of those into a box.
Right. Those
and
don't go
why
together.
they'd be. I don't know. I can't explain it. It's weird, right?
Yeah, it's super weird.
I know.
Yeah,
it's
that
really,
is
really
crazy.
weird.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Oh,
I
I'm
don't
glad
know.
you got
But
your
yeah.
stuff.
I got it all.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have no idea where
Yeah.
that handbag is now,
Yeah.
but I did make everything into
Yeah.
into
The
and that
pillows.
was cool. And I still can't explain it, but I've heard enough of those stories from
But I wonder
clients,
if even
too.
that desire for those things
maybe.
was,
Because why would I want suddenly?
Right.
Those are not things that I
like
would
your
have.
mom, okay, we're going to get woo woo for you, like skeptics or whatever. But I'm like, what if your mom, if your mom was like, but I know that box. You
Yes.
forgot that box. And I know in that box
Oh, I
is
lo-
this. And I'm going to
love that.
plant that desire in your heart for those things. So then,
I have never looked at it that way, but I love that. I love that way of framing it.
yeah. I mean, it's still woo woo.
Yeah.
Oh, it's
Yeah.
it's out there. I think
Yeah.
even my dad was
I
kind
mean,
of like,
I get that.
okay.
That I like him a little bit more, like, as opposed to you're like, there's floating objects,
That's
right?
I
Like,
can't imagine. Did they make their way out of the trash?
Right.
And I
Right.
don't
Right,
know. I
right,
still
right.
don't know. Same thing with a pair of her earrings. Like, couldn't find them anywhere. My dad and I were looking everywhere.
Yeah.
I know I had looked everywhere, and I heard something say, look in this black box in her closet, and they were in there, and the box had a hummingbird on the top of it.
Shut up.
I know.
Amazing.
Yeah.
How
So
beautiful.
did she always love hummingbirds?
Well, so isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Clearly she did,
Yeah.
I guess.
But you didn't
But
know
you
that.
didn't know
Never
that.
noticed, never knew. So like on one of the days when we were looking for things, I heard go back and look in my room again. And as I went to go back and look in her room, there's a hummingbird painting.
Yeah.
But you pass those things all the time. And
Yeah.
and a skeptic would say, well, that's always been.
Been there. You're just,
Yeah, it
tuned
has,
for
but
it.
but I still get it in so many
Yeah.
other.
yeah.
I get one every year on my birthday. That's the first hummingbird sighting of my year. So
That's amazing. So there's this professor at NYU named Dr. Lisa Miller, and she's a professor of psychology and education. She works in the Teachers College at NYU.
okay.
And she wrote a book called The Awakened Mind, and also The Spiritual Child, I believe. And in it, she talks about how she found through her research how important or how beneficial a spiritual outlook on life really helped with children's mental wellness. And one of the ways that she identifies a spiritual, quote unquote, person is somebody who recognizes synchronicities.
Oh yeah.
And I think those are the kinds of things that you're talking about, right? Like the seeing the bird, the finding the earring, these things, they're the numbers, right?
Yes.
They're synchronicities. And when we're kind of in the field, those things pop up and we recognize them. And there is such a sense of comfort,
Right.
and such a sense of enlivened
Yes.
energy in your life when you start to kind of put those things together. And I know that like we feel that often, like you, Erin, and I, when we're having conversations, when we're making those kinds of synchronistic connections,
Well,
of
I kind of
thought.
wonder too, like kind of maybe from my lens is Homo sapien is a pattern seeking animal,
Yeah,
right? Like on
right.
like a
Sure.
innate level, we are like scanning our environment to see
Yeah.
patterns to
To
like
find
make
meaning.
meaning.
Yes.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
But and we do that because like that is part of the human DNA.
Design. Yeah.
But that being part of the human DNA also makes it pretty amazing that like we were talking earlier, like Amy mentioned like the bird medicine. Like I'd never heard that term before. And I was like, Erin, see, when your mom sees
The cardinal.
the
Yeah,
cardinal,
she's right.
yeah. And nobody said to her,
Yeah.
hey, look for birds.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, she just
Yeah.
knew that. And
Yes.
like I've had those moments before, like they're just archetypal.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
They're
Your mom gets birds.
Yeah. She gets
Yeah.
cardinals. Yeah.
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 Mm-hmm.
It's pretty exciting.
Well, and I think when you're looking for patterns, I think you're looking in a way you're hopeful. That's an
Yeah.
optimistic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's a different outlook. It gives you something different than to think that it all ends.
Yeah.
And maybe in that way, that's a comfort, is to believe that they continue to be around us.
Yeah.
I love that. And I love that, that positive outlook, because I think that's what I mean by like being in the field or being in the force field, to find those, like if you are negative and if you're closed off to curiosity,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
right, then, or you're distracted all the time.
Right.
There's all kinds of things that can pull our attention away from just being open to a universe that is ready to.
And there's so many different ways to look at it too. Like, I wouldn't say that my husband, I wouldn't say he's a skeptic, but you know, he knows I'm a trustworthy person. So whatever I'm doing is genuine, but I wouldn't say he's never asked me to read for him.
Yeah.
And he's never sought out a reading from someone else.
Yeah.
But I have seen him change over the past like 6 years since I've been doing this. And just my coolest, most recent story is my son is a senior. He's applying to colleges and he's wanting to play polo in college. And he applied somewhere early decision and came back almost immediately and said, I made the wrong choice. Well, when you've applied early decision, if you get in, you have to go. It's a contract. And so we spent like the whole month of January going back and forth with how do we get out of this? And you can't apply to the other place because you've already done it. So he kind of the week that the early decisions are supposed to be coming out, he gets an email from school number 2 saying, if you want to change your mind and move us from regular to early, you can. And he said, see, it's a sign. My son said, see, it's a sign. I'm supposed to go there. And I said, you can't. You've already, let's talk to your counselor and find out what we can do. Then you check with the coach and see if they still have a spot. There's no way they had one spot left. So he said, see, I'm supposed to go there. And then the next day, the third day, he hears back from his high school guidance counselor who says, you're not going to believe this, but school number 1 just reached out to us and they're releasing their decisions tonight. And he is missing one signature on his application. And so they moved him from the early decision pile to the regular decision pile, which frees him up to do whatever he wants. And she said, and here's the thing, the signature they're missing is the counselor's signature. She said, I know I signed it. And my husband said, you know, that was your mom and my dad up there. I mean, his dad, we have so many stories after his dad passed of like him forgetting to sign things. Yeah. And working to the benefit of like their family. Yeah. You know, insurance and all this stuff. He's like, you know, that was my dad that like pulled that. But it's changed the way my family views things. Yeah. Like they're saying to me, like, that was not an accident. I'm like, no, I know it wasn't an accident. Yeah. So I think it gives you a more hopeful outlook to believe that the universe is working in your favor.
Yes.
I mean, that is true for sure.
Yeah. And I think like college admissions, I've seen it work in college admissions before too.
Yes. It's a stressful process. And it's a conversation I keep having with my mom. It's like, help me. And how did you do this 3 times? Yeah. And she just continues to show up. So.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Wow. That's amazing.
Well, this was so fun.
This was really fun.
I've enjoyed being here.
Yeah, I learned a lot. And I think I need to call you and come in.
Oh, yeah, come to me and Amy together.
I would love to. I would love to. Yeah. Maybe I'll get Erin to come too.
I'd go. I'll do it.
Would you?
Yeah, I would do it. Why not?
Okay.
Yeah,
I'd love to have you.
I say yes to anything.
Okay.
Yeah.
Justin?
Yeah.
Justin? Okay. All right.
I have to say, I feel like some of our best referrals are people who are kind of, I don't really know what I'm doing, but I'm showing up with no expectation. And leaving like, wow, all right, never mind.
Yeah.
There's something there.
Yeah. That's good.
Well, this has definitely been an eye-opening day for us.
Yeah, it's been really fun. Yeah.
And we've learned a lot. And I think, we're all a little less, we're all a little bit more open.
Yeah.
But before we let you go, can we also kind of tell everybody about your website and how to get a hold of you in case they are in need of your services?
Yeah, the best way to get a hold of me is you can send me a message on my website, which is katiewedding.com. So wedding like a wedding, and it's Katie. And I'm not great with phone calls. I have a phone number listed on there, and I am terrible about returning them. So just send me a contact. And then also just make sure that you sign up for my email newsletter.
Okay.
I do send those out.
Sounds good. Great.
Love the conversations you're able to have too, because I love it's the both and that you're bringing to the table. So thanks for having me.
Thank you. As always, thank you for listening. Our listener base is growing every month, and that's because of all of you. Please, if you haven't done so yet, make sure you share this episode with a friend.
If you have any topic suggestions, questions, or thoughts on the show, feel free to write us at atheist@stlpodcast.com.
Atheist is produced by Justin Seiwell and Trend Media STL. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at STL Podcasts.
Thank you for listening, and keep looking for connection.